My best friend was murdered when she was 16, and her rapist killer got away with it. I will never forget the day I met my angel best friend. We were both just 12 or 13 years old at the time. She had moved into the trailer park where I grew up, along with her grandparents and siblings. You see, she was in the foster care system, so she didn't have a typical family life like I did. From the moment we met, we became instant friends. It was like we had known each other forever. We were always together, hanging out and having fun. We would spend hours talking, laughing, and just enjoying each other's company. Our friendship was so strong that even when we got in trouble, our punishment would be not being allowed to hang out with each other. It was like our parents knew that separating us was the worst thing they could do. Despite our close bond, I knew that her home life wasn't great. But at that age, no one really cared about those things. We were just happy to have each other as friends. We would often escape to our favorite spots in the trailer park, like the old abandoned shed or the little patch of woods behind my house. Those places became our sanctuaries, where we could just be ourselves and forget about everything else. As we grew older, our friendship only became stronger. We were there for each other through thick and thin, no matter what life threw at us. We had inside jokes that no one else understood and secrets that we only shared with each other. Looking back, I realize how lucky I was to have found such an amazing friend at such a young age. She brought so much joy and laughter into my life, and I couldn't imagine going through those years without her by my side. But little did I know that our friendship would soon be put to the test in ways I never could have imagined. That the happy, carefree days of our youth were about to be shattered by a terrible secret that would change everything. It was just another ordinary day at school, or so I thought. My best friend and I were sitting in the lunchroom, joking around like we always did. I made a silly comment about her weekend with her boyfriend, not thinking much of it. Suddenly, she jumped up from her seat and started screaming at me. "Shut the hell up!" she yelled, her face turning red with anger. "You're stupid and you don't know what you're talking about." I was shocked and confused. This wasn't like her at all. Before I could say anything, she stormed out of the lunchroom and left school for the rest of the day. I couldn't focus on anything else for the rest of the day. I kept replaying the scene in my head, trying to figure out what I had said wrong. I was worried about my friend and couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. 2 hours later, I received a text from her. It was an apology for her outburst. But what she said next made my heart drop to my stomach. She told me that her weekend with her boyfriend hadn't been what she had said it was. Instead, her cousin had picked her up and taken her to a remote location outside of town. There, he had raped her and choked her repeatedly until she passed out. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My best friend, the person I loved most in the world, had been through something so horrific and traumatic. I started crying uncontrollably in the middle of class, unable to hold back my emotions. My teacher noticed my distress and sent me to the office, where I called my mom to come pick me up. I couldn't even explain to her what had happened. I was so upset. When I got home, I collapsed on my bed and cried for hours. I couldn't believe that someone could do something so awful to my friend. I felt helpless and angry and scared all at once. Little did I know that this was only the beginning of a nightmare that would consume our lives for months to come. That the person who had hurt my friend was someone close to her, someone who should have been protecting her. And that in just a few short months, my world would be shattered once again by an even greater tragedy that would leave me reeling for years to come. After learning about the horrific things my best friend's cousin had done to her, I begged her to tell someone. Anyone. I couldn't bear the thought of her suffering in silence, carrying the weight of that trauma all by herself. But she was so scared. Her cousin had always been a disturbing person, even before this. He would talk about how to dispose of bodies without them ever being found, and how if he couldn't find a girlfriend, he would make one. It was like something out of a horror movie. What's worse, he had been in trouble before for things he had done to her younger sister, who is mentally disabled. He wasn't even supposed to be around them legally, but somehow he always found a way. For months, I watched my friend struggle with the decision to speak out. She was terrified of what might happen if she did, of the backlash she might face from her family and the community. But as spring break approached, something changed in her. She seemed more determined, more resolved. She told me she was ready to talk to her grandma about what her cousin had been doing to her. We made plans to go to the movies together, along with another friend of ours. We were going to see the new Alice in Wonderland movie that had just come out. It was supposed to be a fun day, a chance to escape from the darkness that had been hanging over us for so long. But as we sat in the theater, my friend started texting her grandma. She was pouring her heart out, telling her everything that had happened. I watched her face as she typed, saw the hope and the fear in her eyes. And then the reply came. "Stop lying," her grandma wrote. My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. How could anyone dismiss something so serious, so painful? My friend's face crumpled. She started crying silently, the tears streaming down her face in the dark of the theater. I reached over and grabbed her hand, trying to offer some kind of comfort. But I knew that this was only the beginning of the battle she would have to fight. That even with all the evidence, all the pain and trauma she had endured, there would still be those who wouldn't believe her. A few days after my friend tried to tell her grandma about the abuse, I got a call from her grandma asking if she was with me. I told her no, that I hadn't seen her that day. I was out with another friend, helping her look for shoes for her prom. But as the day went on, no one could find her. I called around to all our usual spots, but no one had seen or heard from her. My parents and everyone else we knew were out looking for her. I was trying my hardest to just get home so I could help with the search. As I waited for my ride, my phone rang. It was my mom. As soon as I answered, I heard her screaming on the other end of the line. I felt my stomach drop. I just knew in that moment that she was gone. It turned out that her cousin had found her hanging in their shed, a dog leash around her neck. He had taken her down, but it was too late. My dad had gone to check on her to see if she was still breathing, but she wasn't. He immediately went after her cousin, because he knew that she had been trying to speak out about what he had been doing to her. We all knew in that moment that he had killed her. The police found him a few hours later and took him into custody, but he was released soon after because, in their words, the victim is no longer here to claim rape. But there was so much evidence that pointed to foul play. Neighbors had seen his car backed up to the shed earlier that day, like he was unloading something. There were finger-shaped bruises around her neck and scuff marks on the back of her boots, like she had been struggling. And the most damning piece of evidence to me was that her underwear was clean, but her pants were soiled. It was like she had been found with her underwear on, but not when she died. But none of it mattered. The police didn't investigate further, and her cousin walked free, and my best friend, my angel, was gone forever. It's been 14 years since I lost my best friend, but the pain is still as fresh as if it happened yesterday. I can't stop thinking about all the evidence that pointed to her cousin's guilt, and how it was all just swept under the rug. The bruising on her neck, the scuff marks on her boots, the fact that her underwear was clean but her pants weren't. It all adds up to something sinister. But because she was gone, because she couldn't speak for herself anymore, no one seemed to care. I think about how scared she must have been in those final moments, how alone she must have felt. I think about all the times I begged her to speak out, to tell someone what was happening to her, and how I couldn't protect her in the end. But what haunts me the most is the fact that her cousin is still out there, living his life like nothing ever happened. He's married now, with 2 daughters of his own. It makes me sick to think about what he could be doing to them, or to other vulnerable girls and women. I want so badly for there to be justice for my friend, for her story to be told and for the truth to come out. But I know that the chances of that happening now, after all these years, are slim. So I carry her with me every day. I tell her story to anyone who will listen, in the hopes that maybe, someday, someone will care enough to do something about it. I try to live my life in a way that honors her memory and the friendship we shared, but the pain never goes away. The questions never stop swirling in my head. I will never stop wondering what could have been, if only things had been different. All I can do now is keep her memory alive, and hope that somewhere, somehow, she knows how much I loved her, and how much I still miss her every single day.